My company is called Microvac Laboratories, and we do environmental testing as well as testing for a number of industries. And I wanted to talk to you today about how our business has grown directly as a result of the Marcellus shale play in Pennsylvania. The company started from very humble beginnings, and in fact, we didn't even start environmental testing. Warren Boyce, the founder of our company, came from South Africa, and he bought a small dairy laboratory in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That was in 1969, and that was just a few years before the Clean Water Act. Mr. Boyce always believed in involvement in politics and community, and he was tipped off that the Clean Water Act was going to be promulgated, so he changed the focus of our company to environmental testing. The company grew substantially through a number of federal testing requirements, which included the Safe Drinking Water Act in 1974, the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act in 1976, and then the Superfund CERCLA Act in 1980. At the onset of each of these regulatory programs, laboratory testing boomed. Our business is directly related to the economic environment of our local areas. Today, we employ over 500 people, mostly scientists, chemists, microbiologists, engineers, and even geologists. But we also employ a number of field service technicians and administrative support. Although the technology's changed quite a bit since the 1970s, the basic scientific premise of data quality and defensibility exists today. We offer many opportunities at our laboratories for entry-level degree candidates. And one of the things that we're really pleased to see is all the candidates we've been able to get from northeastern Pennsylvania. I'm a Wilkes alumni myself, and 20 years ago when I graduated, there was no place to go to work as a molecular biologist. In fact, many people 20 years ago were moving out of our area. Not only with the shale play, but other companies, pharmaceutical growth like Sanofi Pasteur, and manufacturing like the Tobyhanna Army Depot, have given us a good workforce of people and have actually started some of that for the natural gas industry when these first came. Microvac Laboratories has 20 locations, and we're concentrated heavily in the eastern United States. However, we're Pennsylvania-based with our corporate headquarters in Pittsburgh. We have a laboratory in the Poconos, in Scranton, in Harrisburg, Pittsburgh, and Erie. We also have laboratories in Cortland, New York, and Marietta, Ohio. So our geography is concentrated and overlaps the Marcellus and Utica shale plays. We're still a family-owned company. Mr. Boyce passed away, and his son Trevor is our CEO. While we have our headquarters in Pittsburgh, one of the charges that Mr. Boyce left us with is to operate as separate business units in each of our communities. Our laboratories in each area work locally with community organizers and with customer base. He said our philosophy has to be active participation in the supply chain, and we need to stay on top and be ahead of the regulatory environment. We actually don't have a very large sales force for a company that's very interested in growth, and most of our growth has come from business-to-business relationships. So testing, there's a lot of it that you probably don't even realize what goes on. And I will say we have tested a couple of those faucets that light on fire. In almost every industry, environmental compliance is the #1 driver. But that's all intertwined with food testing, pharmaceuticals testing, downstream energy testing, agrochemicals, consumer products, and they're heavily regulated as well. We perform over 2,000 different tests under 17 different environmental and regulatory programs. We test everything from water, soil, air, food, fertilizer, pipes, and bicycles. So who benefits from all of this? Well, that's all of you. All of this regulation and the data that we provide helps ensure that your water is clean and safe to drink, that your food is safe, and the lakes and streams that you recreate on will be there for a long time. It's also difficult to work in a regulatory environment because you tend to work for stakeholders on both sides of an issue. We work with many businesses and corporations, and many of our customers include drilling and pipeline and energy companies. But a lot of that we do through subcontractors and work with engineering and consulting firms. Because of the shale growth, there's been a lot of real estate development and property transactions. Each one of those are required to have testing. We also do a lot of work for restaurants, dry cleaners, laundromats, car washes, and hotels. We We do a lot of work with the public sector as well, and with private individuals. Half of our customer base is in the public and private sector. We've worked for years with municipalities and drinking water and wastewater treatment plants. But also, Pennsylvania DEP, who does a lot of the testing in the shale area, doesn't have the capacity to do everything. So there are many government contracts that are available to private businesses for the overlap of work that they can't fulfill. To work with state government and even local municipalities, contracts and bids are the main vehicle. However, to be eligible for these, one of the best things to do is get to know them, understand when contracts are out and when they're going to expire, and get close to them. You need to be prepared as a business to have a qualifications package together, which explains what your history is, what your background, and most importantly, how you'll continue to provide service even in the case of a disaster. I know that many of our contracts during Hurricane Sandy, when we had laboratories that were flooded, we had to be able to have backup capacity in order to satisfy the needs of our clients. On the private side, and particularly with Marcellus shale development, one of the largest increases the laboratory business saw was homeowner testing. When drilling started in some areas, there was even mention, many homeowners got nervous and they brought in water samples to the laboratory on their own to be tested. For some of these tests, it was the first time that the wells had been tested since they were actually put in. And what we found is that about 50% of the home wells had bacterial or chemical contamination. People were shocked. This wasn't related to the shale, it wasn't related to drilling. It actually went back to the construction of the well or the condition that it was in because it had been so old. These folks didn't have any experience with chemistry and microbiology, and one of the things we learned quickly is that as a laboratory, we needed to provide more than data, but also a service to explain what the numbers meant. We decided that to keep things even and equal and work with both sides of the industry, including gas companies and homeowners, that the best thing we could do was standardize our services, provide educational materials. We also spoke at many community town halls and spent a lot of time with homeowner associations to help them understand what was wrong with their water and how they should fix it. I can't even stress enough how important certification is for the laboratory industry. It's our ticket to do business, and it's the primary evidence of credibility that we can present to our clients. From a regulatory end in shale and gas, we had to do a lot of homework on laboratory methods, new standards, and new regulations for drilling. In Pennsylvania, when drilling first started, there wasn't a standard list of components to test. It was with the work and collaboration with Penn State University and the gas companies themselves that a standard set of testing was established. There's only a handful of certified laboratories in northeastern Pennsylvania, but to caution you, there are many internet advertisements and print advertisements from companies outside of the states. You have to be very cautious. If you're doing any testing for your business or home, you must be sure you're using a certified laboratory. A list of certified laboratory providers can be found on PADEP's website, and if you should have an issue in the future, you have to ensure that the work was done by a certified firm. As I said, environmental compliance was the #1 driver of our business, and there is a lot of testing related directly to this. Pre-drill water testing was certainly the highest volume that we experienced as a company, but also stream studies. When roads are built and well pads were drilled, evaluating runoff and how they affected the existing watersheds. There's also drill cuttings. All the material that's dug out of the ground before wells are drilled has to be tested before it can be disposed of or stored somewhere. Wastewater analysis. All the water that was used to produce the wells needed to be tested before it was recycled or reused. Also, and a few of the panelists mentioned emergency response. As a laboratory, we weren't used to getting a call at 2 o'clock in the morning saying that something was happening, and we had to learn to staff our businesses 24/7. We also have begun to do a lot of air monitoring, where we can assure that the gas that's coming out of the wells isn't getting dispersed into the air, and if it is, that it's at acceptable levels. For the energy industry, there's also a downstream side. All the gas that's produced has to be of a certain level of quality and purity, and that gets tested. The pipes that are drilled underground and do the pipelines, they have to be tested for security and durability. Our company does that. Some of the products that are produced have to be tested to make sure that they're efficient and that they work properly. And also, a lot of testing for the gas industry is done on the transportation safety end. You wouldn't believe, and it's probably off topic to tell you about food analysis, but with the influx of people from the drilling industry into northeastern Pennsylvania, we've seen some of the highest growth in the food industry and business. Food safety, restaurant evaluations and grocery store inspections, soft serve testing, produce, beef, and seafood testing had increased in northeastern Pennsylvania. We also had to learn that we needed to be more than a laboratory, but we had to provide many additional services. Transportation became a big business for us. We increased our fleet of vehicles by 50. We learned that we had to not only provide data, but we needed to learn how to interpret that data while still remaining independent and fair to both sides of an issue. We had to improve and re-emphasize our safety practices and procedures within our laboratories, and especially when we were on site on the field at a well pad. We had to increase our training not only internally, but we had to participate in several external training events similar to what we're sitting in today. We needed to become very much more involved in community and political events. We needed to meet our senators, we needed to meet our representatives, and we needed to meet the community stakeholders to help understand what they needed from our industry. And above all, we needed to continually increase our education about what we do and what the future holds for our industry. Thank you.